Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Carmichael from the Institute for Social Research, Research Center for Group Dynamics, and I'm going to share with you a really unique resource at U of M today called the HomeLab. And rather than going into the nitty-gritty details, I thought we should start with a virtual tour. So I'm just going to show you around our lab space. And just to give us some context, Institute for Social Research is nestled on Central Campus. We are right here behind the Union. So you can see the cube over here, and we're just back across the street from that. And if you were to come inside this building and go down one floor to the basement, you'd see a lot of other laboratory and IT spaces. And then if you kept bumping around, you'd wander into a rather unique looking home-like space called HomeLab. And this is the architecture diagram of HomeLab when it was getting built, just so we can get, again, sort of the bird's eye view of it. So we have the main entrance here. And then as you're coming in, you'll see a kitchen area, an area which is usually used as a dinette, a living space area. Usually we put like a television here and some chairs and seating. You also see a washer dryer, a bathroom space, and then over on the other side, our bedroom. And then if you go up the stairs, you'll reach our observation platform. And as you can see, it's a big loop. If you go back down the stairs, you just kind of start over again. The interior portion here is about 600 square feet. And in total, including the observation room, it's 900 square feet total. And if we zoom out of that a little bit, we'll see that HomeLab itself is nestled inside of a bigger laboratory space called Zion's Labs, named after Bob Zions. And so we're surrounded by other more traditional psychology and focus group rooms. We can see the cubicles over here, and then some little focus group rooms and flex spaces. And HomeLab sometimes does use those spaces as well as a foil or as a setup area for the kinds of research and teaching that we do. But let's take a closer look at some pictures. So here is the view of HomeLab from the front door. And we've kind of angled the camera upwards a little bit so you can see the ceiling. And what I want to point out to you is that, it does look a lot like a home, but there's a lot of technology embedded in it. And so even as we're here, we see the first thing that there's this camera. It's a pan tilt zoom camera, so it can track objects around the lab. And in the Swiss cheese grid of the ceiling, we have a lot of other things going on as well. We have this light switch looking thing, which is a microphone. We have a speaker to pipe in sounds. There's Wi-Fi in the lab. And then we have these ceiling cans here, which is a tunable lighting system to simulate different types of day and different types of light that might be coming into the home. If we take a peek here, we see the kitchen and all of the appliances you would expect in a kitchen. We have a dishwasher, an oven, a microwave, a fridge, and all of it is operational. We also see some windows that have some appliques over them, and those are changeable, so we can simulate different seasons or maybe different locations in the country. Right now, this is a scene of the summertime in Ann Arbor, so we're all looking forward to the spring and the summer warmer weather now. Over here, we have the living room area, which is staged as I described it. So we have a couple barrel chairs and a television playing some Netflix maybe. We have the dinette area staged as a dinette. And then we have the laundry area with a washer and dryer, both functional. Here is the bathroom area I was describing with the shower tub and the toilet and everything you would expect to find in a bathroom. The person who's taking this photo is standing inside yet another shower that's in this space called the walk-in shower or the zero threshold shower. And I'll explain why we have that duplication. And so if we look from this angle, we also see the sink and some cabinets and some mirrors. Every mirror, cabinet, window you've seen so far is a point of observation in the home labs. They're all two-way mirrors, or the windows are, have the ability to see through them. So there's a camera inside this cabinet. There's an observation box inside this mirror, and you'll get another angle on that to see what that looks like. But the point is that bathrooms are really tight spaces. We want to use this for research in a natural way. And so if we have the option to put a camera somewhere rather than a person somewhere, we want to make that possible so that we can look at activities of daily living. And the reason for the dual showers in here, the one that you can't see that the camera person is standing in, is because when we were designing this space, we went to OT and PT and we said, you know, we have an opportunity here to make an ADA compliant space. Should we do that? And they said, please, please don't, because people don't live in ADA compliant housing. They're retrofitting their housing, if anything, or they're just making do with what they have. And so you'll see features like that throughout the space as we're looking at other pictures. In this picture, the cabinets that we see here are actually not attached. They're on magnets, and so they can all come off and allow for space for something like a walker or a chair. And the zero threshold shower is a counterpoint to the step-in tub because the tub presents a mobility challenge for someone who needs to step over it, whereas the zero threshold shower doesn't. And so there are all little features like that throughout HomeLab of adding and removing obstacles for people. Of course, there's a bedroom space. And here we have two more observation windows. We see another one of the lampshade cameras on the wall. And you get just a little peek here of the stairwell that's going to lead up into the back of the lab. But the most important thing about a space like this one is the people that we bring into it. And this space was made for humans. Everything in it functions for humans. And we want people to feel really natural when they're working in this space, whether it's for teaching or whether it's for research. And so we brought in a family to kind of do some staged photos with us, and it was just a really fun time. And so here they are playing a game on the television and baking some cookies, because why not? The oven works. So this is really a place where you could live out your daily life if you didn't mind all the extra cameras and sensors that are integrated into it. Here we see our participant coordinator, Donna Walter, who's on the call today, actually doing some of the dishes in lab, because again, we make messes and we really do need to clean them up, and doing some of the laundry for the lab. I promised that you'd be able to have another look at the mirror in the bathroom, and this is it. So here we've got the magnetic cabinets removed. And then here is the view from behind the bathroom mirror. So we have a mom and her daughter, and they're washing their hands. And we don't have to be right on top of them to observe them doing that. We can just put a camera in or look through the back of the mirror. This space is designed for researchers to reinvent and re-envision. And this is one example of that kind of transformation. So the bedroom in HomeLab is actually separable from the rest of HomeLab. It has its own separate entrance and exit. So you wouldn't have to go through the kitchen to get there. And we had one investigator come in and say, oh, I'd really actually like for this to look more like an exam room or a clinical space. It doesn't need to be 100% authentic, but I want it to evoke that feeling. That was Dr. Kevin Joyner from the School of Nursing, and he was studying healthcare provider and patient interactions, particularly their language around type 2 diabetes and stigma around that. And so he had us transform the bedroom space into a clinical space. And here's another view of that transformation. And you can see this is the separate exit, and then we can seal this side off. And he brought in standardized patients, and then we recruited in the healthcare providers to come and talk to them, and then had a little language-based intervention that they did. This was also utilized to good effect for some training that I'll talk about in a little bit. All right, but if we kept going, we went out that other door, we'd see the stairway, and we'd climb up it and go to the observation platform. And here's just another example where people are a really important part of the equation. So this is our lab manager, Brandon Labbree, and he's educating a couple people on the way that our observation platform works. So he's pointing out some of the physiology feeds that are coming through from some of the sensors that are built into the lab. And I'll show you another view of these screens in a moment. Here's a view through one of the windows of setting up a camera to point at the kitchen area. Again, one of those tight spaces at the sink where we don't want to be on top of people, but we want to let them move and act naturally so that we can observe them unobtrusively. And here's another view of the monitors. So you can see all the different camera feeds. We can run up to 24 different cameras at the same time. Most studies don't need all 24, thankfully, but we have the capacity to do that. And the other stations, which are a little bit blown out in contrast, allow us to monitor the position of the participants within the lab using a tracking system, or sometimes we'll use this screen to monitor heart rate live, monitor other aspects of data quality live. And then on this other screen, we'll use some software called Observer to do behavioral annotation or event marking annotation, because when you have all of these video feeds going simultaneously, it becomes an enormous pile of data to work with afterwards. And since we have someone back here always for safety monitoring, we put that person to work, usually Brandon, and he'll mark particular events that the investigators are interested in capturing, which makes their job later on of analysis much easier. This is the control panel for the lighting system. Not only is it tunable, but it's also programmable. So because we're in a laboratory space, we're able to have exquisite control over our settings and make sure that every participant who comes through has everything exactly the same in the cases where that is something we want to standardize. And this fun shot of a camera overlooking a bowl of lemons is just to remind me to say that we customize this space quite a bit. We move our cameras around all the time. We had an investigator come in who was really interested in the way that feet move. So we dropped our cameras to the floor and plexiglassed them in so that we could do that. We had a child study, and we don't want cameras at adult height for that. We want cameras at child height for that. So again, we were able to adjust the camera montage to fit the context of the study. Likewise with our furniture, we're able to swap our furniture out. We call them props for a reason. And I'll show you our prop catalog in a second. So this is the prop catalog maintained by Donna Walter. It has over 800 large and small props in it. Again, we're trying to move things around, make this feel like a space that children occupy, and make this feel like someone who's an older adult's home, make this feel like a higher or lower level of SES, or maybe it's in a different part of the country. And so we utilize these props to create that feeling, that ecological validity in the space. We also have a ton of different technology available. There's a couple examples here, the biopneumatics put out by BioPack, and we're getting a little bit into the VR space now as well. And I say we, but primarily I'm in Brandon Labbree is getting into the VR space with a few of our studies coming up, and I'll give a little bit more about that in a moment. As far as sensors go, people always want examples of what kind of sensors do you have available, and the list is always growing. I've put a few in here that are getting more use. So I mentioned the BioPack earlier. This comes with a variety of modules that you can add to it. So we can do EKG for heart rate and HRV. We can do EDA for things like stress or SNS activation. We can record muscle activation, respiration, and a variety of other types of sensors that BioPack offers are compatible with our system. This is a new one. We have the MarvelMine indoor positioning system, which allows us to tell where within the lab someone is down to about a 2-centimeter accuracy. This was an ad from an investigator that we were working with who wanted to bring their own system, but then is leaving it with us, so it's being incorporated into our library of sensors. We also have things like APDM, Opal IMUs. Again, this is tracking aspects of movement. And we have some Tobii eye trackers available for use, both screen-based and 3-dimensional. And more all the time. Every time we do a study and add a sensor, we try to make that sensor available to the next investigator to use. We also strongly encourage people to BYOS, bring your own sensors. So we had a collaboration with Dr. David Lips. He is in kinesiology. He didn't want to use our EMG system. He wanted to bring his own world-class EMG system with him because his study was very attuned to muscle activity in people who have had breast cancer and reconstructive surgery. So we said, absolutely, we want to support that. He brought in his Delsys EMG system, and because of the way our system is constructed, we're able to plug a lot of those systems in to ours and have it sync up with the cameras and the other devices that are in the lab. We've also had a lot of wearables brought into the lab, things like Actigraph, Fitbit, Apple Watch, and Garmin models. We did a collaboration with one particular researcher, Dr. Sadar Ansari out of the Wheel Institute, who is studying the accuracy of these devices and the error rates of these devices against each other. And he absolutely kitted out his participants from head to toe in these wearables and had them doing various activities of daily living to see which ones cause the most error in these devices. And here's a sneak peek. If you crochet, you may get a few extra thousand steps that you weren't expecting in your device. So that was one of the most tricky activities for these devices to capture accurately. I mentioned that I talk a little bit about our VR work. This is Brandon Labbree, again, our lab manager, and here he is demonstrating HomeLab at the Michigan Union Ballroom. This was for the ISR 75th anniversary, and we couldn't bring the HomeLab to the Union, so we brought its digital twin. So Brandon reconstructed HomeLab. As you can see on the right, this is his 3D model of HomeLab, and he kitted it out with all of the things that you see in HomeLab in the kitchen and the bedroom and everywhere else. And then people could come and put on the VR headset and actually walk through the HomeLab while they were at the Union. And this was sort of a fun party trick, but it also allowed Brandon to kind of build up his skill in VR in anticipation of a couple of upcoming studies. And it's pushing us forward into the future as we're preparing to do more mixed reality and augmented reality work. It's nice that we have this digital twin to work with as well. And here's just a couple other angles on the digital twin just to show you what Brandon did. So here's a view of the kitchen that you saw earlier, and it has the fridge and the magnets and everything that I expect to be there. And then from the bathroom as well, we can see the step-in shower and a view of the washing machines out the door. So now that you've seen our space, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do at HomeLab. So here's who we are. We are led by Dr. Richard Gonzalez. He is the faculty lead of the HomeLab, as well as the director of the Research Center for Group Dynamics, and the Amos N. Tversky Collegiate Professor of Psychology and Statistics. So Rich is sort of that Renaissance guy who's all over campus. He's doing a lot of different types of collaboration and really interesting work, trying to kind of break down the silos between social sciences and biological sciences. And we're his team. So here I'm the research process director, which means that I follow all the research projects coming through HomeLab through their life cycle. Donna Walters, our participant experience coordinator, and she does just an absolutely spectacular job at recruiting research participants and ensuring that they have really wonderful experiences participating in this work, and that they want to continue participating in research going forward. Brandon Labbree is our technical wizard behind the scenes, making all of the technology come together, as well as doing pre-processing on the data that we get. And then there are a few other folks I want to mention. Natalie Leonard, who's currently a PhD student at Taubman, worked with us for many years before that as a specialist in human environment interaction, as well as Volo Dugari, a junior professional researcher in our lab, and Shaya Gang, School of Social Work field intern working with us for a couple of years. So it's a really wonderful, supportive team here to serve the U. And this is what we do for Michigan. So HomeLab is a U of M core facility. We're part of my cores. And our key mission is to serve the U of M community and its external and industry partners through creative applications of simulation and sensing, mainly in a home-like context, but sometimes in others. Because we have this sensor library, we want people to make good and creative use of it, even if it's not inside of the home lab itself. Usually our work ends up falling into two categories if I was to boil it down. It's either simulation for research or it's simulation for teaching. And we provide a variety of services to support that work. These services are tiered. It can be full service, like soup to nuts, we do everything, or it can be a la carte. So we can get a la carte staffing, space access, props, and equipment to do protocol design or IRB support or recruitment and participant management. We can do the full data collection on our own, or we can blend ourselves with your team. We do data cleaning and pre-processing, especially for folks who are new to sensor work. We want to lower the barriers to using these devices meaningfully and getting a good analysis from them. And we can help with analyses as well in whatever capacity somebody would need. Really, we're here to meet folks where they are, to support them in the ways they need support, and to stay out of the way in the ways that we need to as well. I want to give a couple examples of simulation for teaching versus simulation for research. And I really have cherry-picked these, but here are a couple teaching examples that we've been a part of. So on the left-hand side here, we have the MIWI training program, which is run by Dr. Brianna Mazuk out of the School of Public Health, Social Epidemiology, I believe. And she's been running this program for about 5 years now. I think we've been part of it since the very beginning. They bring in cohorts of early career or changing track scientists. And part of the workshop, the part that we play, is to do a little bit of training around human-centered research protocol design. And we use the simulation as that teaching medium. So we bring people in and ask them to design a protocol, and then we play out the protocol using role play in the two different spaces. So we say, hey, what if you were designing this protocol to go into someone's home? What would that be like? What would that feel like? What would we need to account for? And what if we switched it up? What if we took that protocol you're working on and now we brought it into a more clinical space? The participants are coming to you rather than you going to them. How would that change the power dynamic? How would that change the way that sensors would work? How would that change your interactions with them? And it's been a very successful workshop. We're really looking forward to running it again this May. On the right-hand side is a slightly newer effort. This is an introduction to psychophysiological measurement and metrics. It's meant for true beginners, largely aimed at social scientists looking to get into sensor research, but open to all. And this is an ICPSR topical workshop run by our neighbors at ISR across the street. And this is a way for people to get hands-on with sensors and learn to use it for themselves, because we're not just here to do this for people, we're here to do this with people and help them learn what it means to look at these sensor readings and what it means to process these signals and the sort of art, the unexpected level of art that goes into sensor processing and preparation and what to look out for. We also compare lab grade to wearable sensors and help people think critically, about what kinds of sensors they need and how they should look at different features as they're choosing what to use in their particular studies. And we're looking forward to running this one again this year in July 7th, 8th, and 9th. And we'll contrast this a little bit with simulation for research. Again, I've cherry-picked just a couple examples. So here we have someone who is using a mind-controlled prosthetic. This was a collaboration with Dr. Cindy Chestek and Paul Soderna. Mainly we interacted with their postdoc, Philip Vu, so credit to him. And in this study, they had developed this incredible mind-controlled prosthetic. And on the left-hand side, you see an early participant come in, and as you can see, the prosthetic is just sitting on the table, and it's connected to them through these leads. and they see the twin of the hand on the monitor, and they're using their mind to control the fingers and thumb of the hand that they're seeing on the screen. And this is like early days tests of this prosthetic. Once they were further along and they had shrunk the technology down, they were able to get it inside of a backpack, which is what you see here. And there's still this lead tethered to the participant's arm, but they were able to bring them into this middle space of HomeLab, right outside of the clean and sterile testing conditions that they had initially, and a little bit closer to a natural experience. So here we see the participant is simulating cooking a meal. And in this case, we didn't use heat at this point, but we just wanted to capture all the actions of mixing and using both hands, one with the prosthetic on, in a realistic way. And what could we learn from that realism that we couldn't learn from having the hand sitting on a desk? Here's a second example. We were looking at co-parenting, and this is a collaboration with Dr. Brenda Voling. And so we brought co-parents into the lab. They were asked to wear this Empatico wearable device in the lab. And the reason for that was Dr. Voling was interested in attunement or synchrony between family members. And the protocol involved a lot of slightly challenging staged events. So here we had some activities that we knew were going to create big messes, and that would be challenging for the parents to navigate. Or we would do sort of a delayed gratification with a child where they weren't allowed to touch something that they really wanted to touch until the timer went up, and watch the interactions between the parents and child and how stressful and how attuned were they through that event. So this was another kind of really interesting, really fun study that benefited from this context, because before Dr. Voling came to us, she was running these studies in an office, and she would spread like a blanket on the floor and then put the toys out that way. But this provided so many more opportunities to see in a controlled setting how people would interact in a home-like space, in a more common space for them to be in. And I mentioned middle spaces or third spaces before, and I want to come back to that for a second. So, and just talk a little bit about what it's like creating third spaces via simulation and why we do that. So for a very long time, we have had this pathway of from the lab out into the wild. So we can create something in the lab, test something in the lab, and then deploy it out to reality. And this works great a lot of times, but often we'll see that once that thing is deployed to the wild, a lot of unexpected things can happen, right? Like the example with crocheting giving you, hundreds to thousands of extra steps. And we can't always know why we're getting these kinds of differences in the wild compared to what we were seeing in the lab. And that is a place for third spaces like HomeLab. So rather than going straight into the home or straight into the wild, we can create a third space between lab and between home called HomeLab. And this gives us a little bit of that chaos factor, but we can also control the things that are important, or standardize the things that are important, or observe what's going on in ways that we can't peer into people's lives in their homes. And this can be a very helpful spot to be in, like, for example, Dr. Ansari, this was an important space for him. But we're not alone in doing this. There are many different places on campus that I would consider third spaces. I'll give you another quick example, which is MCity. And here, the first space might be our automotive partners, people developing automated vehicles. And then we think about the community, neighborhoods and roads, real highways, and the performance of those automated vehicles on those highways. It makes a whole lot of sense to have a third space somewhere between those two things before we deploy, right? And that's what a role that MCity can serve. It's a simulated roadway and community that autonomous vehicles can navigate under observation with a lot of sensing involved before we put things out into the real world. Or even working backwards, if we see something in the real world that we can't understand, we can move back into that third space and say, okay, let's see what that looks like again, but now with all the cameras on. And it doesn't stop at MCity. Um, Simulation spaces abound at U of M. This is actually something, sort of a hidden secret, that we're really actually good at simulation in a lot of different ways. And I've put a few examples up here. I know I'm missing a ton because they're hidden all over campus. But I already mentioned MCity. The Michigan Performance Research Laboratory is another space where we get simulation, this time often around movement, especially athletics, especially high performance athletics, things like rowing and running and all those sorts of movement that can be censored up. School of Nursing and Michigan Medicine also have their own simulation spaces, which are fantastic, just really excellent for teaching, future healthcare providers before they go out into practice, right? Or to bring back in to teach new skills, right, through continuing education. And so we can see School of Nursing up here and Michigan Medicine down here with a simulated newborn. Robotics is also doing this, right? Deploying robots into new spaces that need to look like the real spaces that humans inhabit. Taubman College has something called TV Lab, which is a virtual reality laboratory where architecture students can see their creations come to life in virtual reality before they even build a physical model, let alone build an actual product or structure. And so these are hidden all over campus. And we're just really honored to be amongst such excellent colleagues. And I'll stop there. If you are interested in taking a physical tour of HomeLab, or you just want to see more of what I've shown in this presentation, you can check us out at homelab.isr.umich.edu on the web, or you can email at us at umhomelab@umich.edu and come talk. We love hearing about creative uses of the space and the sensors. We just love to hear what other folks on campus are doing. So please feel free to reach out.